I'm going to read to you a poem composed in November of 2016, immediately after the Trump election, titled Plan B. In the event, I made a series of annotations for the French scholar and translator Abigail Lang. And I will also be reading to you from these annotations at a later moment, 4 years almost to the month of the Trump election. Now, there are a number of things that I would point out about this project. One has to do with the nature of the present, or the present time. And I think in the process of writing this poem and then commenting on it, I'm concerned not simply with the present, but with the historical present, the present as constructed. And so you can see the ways in which my thinking through the present in 2016 was built out of the pieces and fragments of the situation we were in, but it was also trying to look toward the future and the moment that I am now in, looking back on it. With that, I'll begin by sharing the screen, and that itself is philosophically meaningful. What does it mean to share a screen? The annotated Plan B. I'll read only from the first 30 stanzas of the poem, and then I'll return to the annotations. From Plan B, November 2016. Damn the consequences. Titanic loss drives market up. Red states rule over blue states. As a consequence of illogic, all can be winners in Casino Royale. Do not mention Plan B on social media. Never underestimate the power of data analytics to fill in blanks. The people, according to whom, clock into their diurnal routine and normalize. Gleichschaltung freezes the present moment in a congealed frame, meaning merely the price of witnessing events. To learn this word, use it in conversation until it too is normal, watching the returns and reading Armed Cell until nothing is normal. All is weird and strange. Combinatorial demographics, algorithmic decisions. We break ourselves up to produce more literature for the illiterate. Beyond categories reach, the abstraction of number lays waste, turns psychological. Gleichschaltung repeats its deadly meaning. Is that a thing or an image of one? The image detaches and spins as a segue to Plan B as next segment of the narrative. Aggregative informatics yield qualitative results. I use the word advisedly, resulting in a shift in the quality of life as a cognitive process. I use the word terrified in a sentence that states nothing is normal. License plate reads brute test, a message in a bottle driving in Michigan, windows rolled up. And if he bicycles to work, he'd be called out for peddling while black. All data tends toward a common center of means-end rationality. The shining, screened in reverse, disappears into itself. There is no comprehension. There is only computation. Autumn leaves blasted in virtual space. The flat line of the political, result of brute force, a kind of numbness, men made of cardboard, paralyzed inertness. Plan B, birth control, countermeasure to terminate unwanted presidency. The darkest hour may be just before dawn. I refuse to normalize high-low distinction that makes class politics a joke for the ages. They refuse to vote their interest because they do not know it. Gleichschaltung follows shame and humiliation with brute force. And the poem ends after 100 stanzas. Damn the torpedoes, down with Gleichschaltung, and prepare Plan B. And so, from the annotated Plan B, for Abigail Lang. Damn the consequences. Titanic loss drives market up. Red states rule. Damn the torpedoes must be from the Battle of Manila Bay, what American voters were thinking when they elected Trump. My Facebook post when the election went south was Titanic. See if huge or huge as an index of loss, the sinking of the Titanic. The stock market only gained after the election. The US is divided into red states and blue states, most notably after a map published in the New York Times after the Bush II election in 2000. American politics has been moving to one-party rule in red states and blue states since. See my poem on Bush II's re-election, Blue States. Over blue states. As a consequence of illogic, all can be winners. Winning versus losing becomes the meta discourse of the election as a decisive event. Populism elects itself, just as every man can be a winner. Winning is not rational, as a winner is the decisive event of winning in the event. In America, we say nothing succeeds like success. Decisionism is at the core of this election as an event. All meaning follows results seen as decisive. In Casino Royale, do not mention Plan B on social media. The winner in the event owned casinos in Atlantic City that went bankrupt. The James Bond film Casino Royale is a metaphor for American democracy. We are in the movies, a fantasy space. Plan B is announced here and has many meanings. It will be repeated once every 10 lines, as also will be the word Gleichschaltung. One meaning for Plan B is to fill in the blanks, the president, which cannot be said on social media. On the recurrence of Gleichschaltung, see below. Never underestimate the power of data analytics to fill in blanks. Data analytics of the sort pollsters use to assess the predictable value of polling data can only be applied retrospectively, not prospectively. But a retrospective determination of a future event is a contradiction. Meaning in the election was a blank that was waiting to be filled in by retrospective data analysis. The blanks are provided on forms used to generate data that capture metadata to generate analysis. The people, according to whom, clock into their diurnal routine. The definition of the people is a retrospective determination based on data analytics. Pollsters attributed to the final election result to demographics, meaning the underlying data their analysis did not entirely represent. Once declared of the people, a discourse is created on a temporal basis that works to normalize their constitution as such. The pressure to normalize is thus an attempt to constitute the people on the basis of the retrospective determination of data analytics. Everyday life will be the primary site for normalization, as I found after the election, in a series of interactions in doctors' offices, hair salons, auto repair shops, and hardware stores, as predictable as the sun coursing in its diurnal round. And normalize. Gleichschaltung freezes the present moment. Our political imperative of the present moment is not to normalize, to resist by any means necessary the retrospective construction of a polity based on the decisive result. Gleichschaltung is a term from the history of National Socialism, indicating the switching over to the same or coordination of both institutions, such as Boy Scouts, to Hitler Youth, and psychology, in which assimilated Jews would suddenly find themselves to be excluded. We must resist any such attempt at coordination, as we saw with the Muslim travel ban. The word appears every 10 lines, with shifting shades of meaning, to keep it in the mix of discourse, but to undermine its application. Gleichschaltung portends a presentism that we cannot allow. I'll move now to the end of the poem. Now use the word reprobate, an unprincipled person, rogue, rascal, scoundrel. There must be a bad actor at the heart of every algorithm. The machinic parsing of like and unlike gives him free rein. There was a time in the past when people behaved like this, in the Ancien Regime as the domain of the libertine. In that time, the fuckers of destiny held sway, deploying lettres de cachet to impose their errant will on those of the lesser class, milkmaids, shepherds, servant girls, liverymen consumed in abandon. Language has a word for such moral cretins, the reprobate, as the sum total of the attributes it assumes. Bad actors are fuckers, counting the bodies of victims. A dictionary gives us the means at their disposal, all the ways we have become undone by them. Under these algorithmic searches lie the bad actors of the Ancien Regime, searching out their victims in the order of words. Their metadata guides them on their way toward new and unusual conquests. Here, the demographics of metadata becomes a Sadian scene of seduction, betrayal, capture, use. Miscreant, good for nothing, villain, wretch, rake, degenerate, libertine, debauché. Piling up synonyms for bad actor creates an antonymic countermovement insofar as his misdeeds cannot be believed. Cognitive science shows us that a limited capacity for detail, implication, and argument leads to an inability to distinguish truth from falsehood. When language becomes too complex, where there are too many meanings, we have become content to believe lies. The 50-50 rule explains the fault line between the massive information and cognitive schema incapable of processing it. Algorithms sort data into categories of truth and lies in an extramoral sense. Inference, connection, and judgment are the victims of the algorithm in a process much like sexual assault. And raise the Edmund Fitzgerald, a good ship and true, from a mill in Wisconsin. A marine disaster becomes a single data point in the database of the world's shipping. A statistical calculus maps the risk of similar events in time and space. If we assume an increased volume of traffic, the periodic variation of intensity of storms combines in the likelihood of disaster. Average increases of global temperatures are a factor as well. Not knowing the determinants of their fate, the captain and the crew of the Edmund Fitzgerald plied the waters of the Great Lakes, shipping iron ore from source to target. When the ship went down, their song rose up, expressing the unfulfilled aspirations of a people whose interests are represented in absentia. The Edmund Fitzgerald became the people's mournful double when it vanished without a trace. Fully loaded for Cleveland. Waves broke over the railing, gales of November slashing. The content of the song, When the Ship Went Down, represents the people's mournful loss, the ship of state in absentia. Picture the ship at the moment of its launch, with only many good voyages to come. Bad weather is our destiny, sending all good ships to the bottom. Waves are the undeterred forces of profit and loss, overwhelming our mere conveyances. In the long wave of capital accumulation, the crisis must come when the market is saturated and profits inevitably fall. Thus, our destruction is the fate of the many long waves of capital accumulation. But the captain and crew's loyalty to their ship was rewarded by a song that lives on in memory. Turbulence is destiny. Our demography is in pieces. Nothing is decided. Turbulence is the noise of totality that leads every particular to be overwhelmed and rise to the top. In retrospective determination, what will have been has become a politics of the present. Every demographic measure strains at a prediction it cannot achieve until in the event it is decided. The fluctuation of meaning on the political market expresses our instability and need, as the fluctuation of language on the symbolic market indicates the dissociation of value from price. Can we ever achieve value? Something needed to be done, but the worst outcome was the result. A decision as politics is the destruction of polity in the event. Nothing survives under its mandate of heaven. All is projected, loaded with materials, ready to hand for use. The future is a projection of outcomes that tries to participate in its result. Data sets and projective forecasts pile up in the warehouse of potential futurity. Cyber bits demonstrate their materiality as repetitive tasks waiting to be performed. Projected forecasts of weather events achieve an increase of global warming. Projected forecasts of political events come undone through the mechanics of projection. All is projection and loss when understood as the predictability of data. All is ready to hand for use once the projected illusion has been eliminated. The task of the writer is to render the phantasmatic logic of projection null and void. This will be accomplished by seizing the database and turning its inferences toward evaluation and use, a task begun here. Damn the torpedoes. Down with Gleichschaltung, and prepare Plan B. We can take action against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. Just as incoming data overwhelms processors in a data surge, so the bitstream volume of our common destiny may assume control. The end of normalization opens the way to market turbulence and political disruption. The president must be impeached on a daily basis, and in the long run, this will be achieved. In the event of any such exigency, we must prepare for the moment when the data center goes down. Connections we make now will have survived it.